Well, I think we can probably go ahead and make some kind of fancy base here. We'll put some, put a base on our table here. Then we're going to do some material stuff, set up a little bit of lighting. Check my time here. Yep, it's a long file. So what we're going to do here is position your 3D cursor right over top of this guy. So you're going to right click in the center of the table, as close to the center as you can get it. And in the front view, I'm going to change over to front view, view in front. I'm going to make sure that my 3D cursor is up here sitting on the table. So I right click up there. It actually does not move it in depth when I'm doing this. It will only move it in 2 dimensions when I know which graphic, which is very helpful. So if I move my camera there, you see that guy sitting in the middle of the table. I'm going to go ahead and add, I'm going to get out of edit mode, by the way. You do not want to be in edit mode when you're going to do this next step. Because what we're going to do is add another piece of geometry. If you're in the edit mode of this table and you add it, it's going to be added inside of the table object. So they're not going to be manipulated at the same time. It's going to treat it as a copy table base, which is probably quite marketable, actually, if you think about it. I'm going to go ahead and add a mesh, and I'm going to choose a tube, which is not visible at all here because of the shading and because it is very, very flat. So I'm going to change this to wireframe. I guess they changed the local view. I might have to get out of local view in order to see that, because you can't add new things in the local view, or at least in this alpha.
Yes.
So that's a very large base. So I'm going to use my transform tools to shrink this guy down a little bit.
That's one of the things I'm really want to look into.
And once I'm got this guy where I want it, I'm going to go ahead and get him into local view as well, just so I'm looking at this guy.
I didn't even get to.
I'm going to get into edit mode for this guy. This is a cylinder primitive, or a tube. Not really much of a tube since it has end caps on it here. But we're going to fix that. I'm going to get into vertex mode. So I'm going to click on vertex down here, down at the very bottom, so I can click the individual vertices. I'm going to select this one in the very top here, and I'm going to hit the delete key. And it's going to ask me what I want to delete. I'm going to delete the vertices that I have selected, and it'll open this pop-up on here. Regular delete, yes. You can also use the X key. The X is also delete. No, delete. You want the vertices, very first one. Delete all, delete it. Everything inside the mesh, which I've never really found to be very useful.
Yeah, because the object isn't.
Because the object still exists. There's just nothing inside. I'm not really sure. Not very useful. So what we can do is kind of sculpt this guy using some of those loop cuts and scale things that we've already done. I'm going to do my loop cut and slide here. And I'm going to scale this guy. And I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep making slices and keep scaling this. We're going to make some interesting shapes here. Oh yeah, well, don't
Will you skip so you're so while you're getting this?
S, yeah. And just drag away from it. You'll see it. G. That's why I use GRS, X, Y, Z. I made something kind of fancy, I guess. I know, isn't that? I have a fancy spin. In whatever stage you're at here for the modeling, I'm going to talk about some of the modifiers that you can place on your object that will aid in the modeling process. There's one called subdivision surfaces that we're going to use here, and I'm going to pull up this example to show some of the modifiers. But the stuff that you're working on, you can do a subdivision surface modifier. What this does is subdivides all the surfaces, as the name would imply, but also tries to smooth all the surfaces out. So what I'm going to do, this is actually a property. So I'm going to go over to my properties panel over here, and I'm going to click on the little wrench guy. That's the modifiers tab. And there should be nothing in there, so we have to click the Add Modifiers button. And we get a nice list here. And we want to choose subdivision surfaces, conveniently not in alphabetical order. Well, they actually are in alphabetical order, but these are generate, these are deform, these are simulate. So they're in alphabetical by column. So there is some chaos and madness there. For some reason, so if I do a subdivision surface here, you see that this is trying to smooth this out a little bit, and I get some properties over here. Right down here is the number of subdivisions. The only thing that you can see right now is how many are in the view for it. That's where the view comes into play there. If I bump that up to 2, see that it's a little bit smoother. But the problem with this base is it doesn't have anything to do with the number of surfaces here. It actually has to do with the polygon shading, which is actually right over here. If you want to make this actually smooth shaded, then we click on the smooth button over here. So we get something like this guy. Yes. Oh, that's what we want. Well, you're in edit mode. Yeah.
Yeah, get out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the object itself, but that's actually not just subject.
It actually shows you the page.
Your object pulls back up.
Yeah. There's some other things you can do for modifiers here. You see we have a paper thin base here. There's actually a modifier that can take care of this. I'm going to remove my subsurf modifier. I'm going to add a modifier called solidify. And what that will do here, we'll add thickness to your mesh. And you can actually combine these. This is a modifier stack. So I've added thickness to this guy. And now I'm going to add the subsurf right on top of this guy. And now it's done both. Now it has thickness and it's smooth. So I've created an inside wall for this as well.